I think the film is actually very good news. The way it started out made me feel like I was going to hear the same old story that I've heard about coal mining for a long time, and I was really happy to hear that this was a pretty happy ending in many ways. When I first was listening and watching the film, it reminded me of a book that was written back in the early '60s by a gentleman named Harry Caudill. I don't know if you're familiar with a book called Nighttime Comes to the Cumberland. And it is the story of the Cumberland Plateau and how the natural resources of that area, Appalachia, have been basically destroyed for the last 150 years. And the story about the coal companies coming and tricking the landowners into leasing their property is something that happened 125 years ago. A professor up at Middlebury College invited me to facilitate a discussion of anti-coal activists from all over the country. And we were in West Virginia for a few days and then again in Washington to talk about building a strategy to fight mountaintop removal. And it was great for me because I had spent about 10 years doing international work, and I came back to American-made activists, environmental activists, which is where I got my start. Anybody else want to share a thought?
I think the tenacity.
Tenacity.
Yeah, and
it's a great word.
The commitment, which especially that the woman had, and her ability to go to the various people and appeal to what was important to them.
Right. That's great.
And she got support.
Mm-hmm. Support is another good one. Tenacity and support.
Well, I'll be a little bit of a downer. I'm a native Kentuckian. I know all those people in that film. I'm an expatriate Kentucky. Last time I was in Kentucky, I was working as an archaeologist, surveyor on cultural resource management issues. I've surveyed many of these strip mines where you're not allowed to go, where it's trespassing, you'd be shot. Mm-hmm. I've been, it's like the moon. It's in West Virginia, Kentucky, it's the moon. I worked in Texas and Louisiana, the natural gas and oil fields. It's the same thing. This film, I'm glad it's going to go out. It's going to make people feel good on the other end of the spectrum, the left end of the spectrum. But it was contrived by, it was done, they didn't say anywhere in there, but it was all Appalachia people, which is a media organization in Eastern Kentucky. And I know those people are good people. They all know each other. It's just like, I'm sorry, I used to be a filmmaker too. So I see how they put it together. Well, and it's kind of gnawing at me because
film is a story, right?
Yeah, it is.
There's a lot of stories there, I'm sure, that weren't told, but
it's really ugly there now. It's really ugly, and it's getting uglier.
Exactly what happened there, but first of all, I didn't see the level of poverty that I think exists in that whole region. Just grinding poverty. I didn't see the level of resistance on the part of the coal company.
Mm-hmm. I'm really saddened and frustrated that we don't seem to have the will in terms of making policy at a national level to deal with this issue as an urgent existential issue. If people understood how critical it is to not burn this stuff, these issues wouldn't come to play at all. People wouldn't be mining it. But I think this little community is kind of squeezing the balloon. It'll go somewhere else. They'll go to Wyoming or Colorado and strip mine there where it's cheaper if they can avoid litigation in communities that are less resistant to it. I'm kind of pessimistic about the future if we can't get some kind of consensus here that we really have to stop using so much of this kind of fuel to power our economy. It's going to kill us.
So there are a lot of strategies out there, but I guess the first one starts with sort of a realization of what it is you're going to do yourself to make a difference. And in this instance, with mountaintop removal, there's an organization which you're probably familiar with, ilovemountains.org, and you can go to their website and click in your zip code and find out whether or not the electricity that you're purchasing right now is actually coming from mountaintop coal. And you'll be very surprised if you put in the zip code, this electricity in this room is somehow related to mountaintop removal. So what does that mean? What are you going to do about it? I would suggest two things. One, you have to write a letter to your power company saying, I don't want this as a source of my electricity. And two, I would encourage you to write a letter to the friends and family of, what's your name? Ephraim. To say that you're supporting the work that they're trying to do to make a better economy in where they live. So those are two things you can do. And then you see where it goes from there. Everybody has their own path to make change.
Convincing. I just wish I had a clearer picture in my mind of how this little action here leads to something bigger.
Right.
And leads to where it needs to be. I don't get how that happens.
Yeah.
It seems like maybe that's an isolated incident and it was a nice story and that's the end of it.
Well,
It's not isolated. The Kentuckians for the Commonwealth organization that was funding that whole meeting that you saw in the middle of the film works throughout Kentucky and these communities. That's just one nut on the tree.
Right.
This is happening all over Kentucky, and same thing in West Virginia, and into Pennsylvania now, western Pennsylvania. Hopefully it'll go into fracking soon, whatever it is, with the natural gas in Pennsylvania and New York State. But they're all connected. But they didn't tell you that. You didn't get that out of the film from the filmmaker's craft.
And that's reassuring. I mean, because that to me is what, that's where these small stories become really relevant and to the bigger issue.
You're right.